The mistake that doomed them. The alien ship appeared without warning, materializing in Earth's atmosphere like a blackened wound against the sky. One moment, the world carried on as usual. Children played in parks, workers commuted to their jobs, and nations bickered over resources. The next, a colossal starship, larger than any human city, hung over New York City. Its hull shimmered with a metallic sheen that reflected the sunlight, casting a ghostly shadow over the skyline. People froze in place, staring upward in a mixture of awe and dread. Traffic came to a halt. Phones were lifted to capture footage, and panic began to spread like wildfire. The sky was no longer Earth's alone. The first contact that wasn't. Inside the United Nations Emergency Chamber, Captain James Miller of the United Terran Defense Force stood stiffly at attention, his jaw locked tight as the main screen flickered to life. The transmission came not through radio waves or text, but through a direct neural broadcast, a message sent straight into the minds of every human on the planet. A voice, deep, layered, and utterly alien, spoke within their heads. "We are the Galactic Dominion. Your species is now under our jurisdiction. Surrender your military and planetary defenses immediately. If you comply, you will be integrated into the Dominion peacefully. If you resist, annihilation will follow." The voice was not a request. It was a statement of inevitability. Miller's hands clenched into fists. He had been in war zones, had seen things that haunted him in the dead of night. But this was different. Humanity had always feared the day they weren't alone. Now, that day had arrived. And these aliens, they had made a terrible mistake. The arrogance of the Dominion. The transmission ended, and the screen shifted to display the alien delegation. They stood in a circular throne room, surrounded by floating data glyphs and holographic projections. Their leader, High Commander Xalver, regarded humanity with a look that could only be described as condescending amusement. His species, the Vrektor, were tall and powerful, their exoskeletal bodies layered with natural armor stronger than steel. Their deep-set, predatory eyes gleamed with centuries of conquest, and their ridged skulls bore golden crowns of authority. For millennia, the Vrektor Dominion had conquered and consumed worlds, forcing species into submission under their rule. Their technology was advanced beyond anything humanity possessed. Their war fleets had annihilated civilizations far greater than Earth. In their minds, humanity's fate was already sealed. They had no idea what they had just walked into. The UN Secretary-General stepped forward cautiously. "With all due respect, High Commander, Earth is a sovereign world. We will not surrender." The alien's mandibles twitched in what might have been a smirk. "You misunderstand, human. This is not a negotiation. This is an inevitability." He gestured with one clawed hand, and the screen changed to show Earth's orbital defense grid, military satellites, space stations, and a handful of warships stationed near Mars. Xalver continued, "Your technology is primitive. Your ships barely scrape the edges of your solar system. Your weapons are laughable. We will not even need our full fleet to break you." The silence in the room was suffocating. Miller's heart pounded. His mind screamed at him to do something, to wipe that smug alien expression off Xalver's face. Then the alien leader leaned forward, his voice dropping into something even more condescending. "Do not be afraid. We will make this painless." Miller grinned. Xalver paused, his expression shifting slightly. "What's so funny, human?" Miller stepped forward, his voice calm, steady, deadly. "You've cornered the wrong species. The truth about humanity." A silence hung between them. The Vrektor had conquered hundreds of species before, most of them brilliant, peaceful, logical civilizations. Empires with towering fleets and sophisticated defenses that crumbled before overwhelming force. But humans were something different. They weren't the strongest. They weren't the smartest. They weren't the most advanced. But what they were was dangerous. In their arrogance, the Vrektor had made one critical error. They assumed humanity would break the way all others had. They hadn't studied Earth's history properly. They hadn't seen what happened when you pushed humanity to its limits. They hadn't learned that when humans were cornered, they became monsters. The battle begins. The Dominion fleet moved swiftly, descending from orbit in a display of overwhelming force. Titanic warships, so vast they blotted out the sun, positioned themselves in Earth's skies, their weapons humming with planet-breaking energy. The countdown to surrender began. 48 hours. The world held its breath. But beneath the surface, humanity wasn't panicking. They were preparing. In secret military bunkers, deep beneath mountains and oceans, the true power of Earth's defense forces came to life. Stealth battleships, invisible to Dominion sensors, began launching from hidden shipyards. Experimental railgun platforms, designed to fire kinetic projectiles at near-light speed, were activated in orbit. Quantum AI war strategists, trained on thousands of years of human history, devised the battle plans that would turn this invasion into a massacre. And on the ground, the most dangerous weapon humanity had ever created was preparing for war. It wasn't nuclear bombs. It wasn't advanced drones. It wasn't even experimental superweapons. It was the human mind. The one thing they couldn't predict. The Vrektor Dominion relied on technology, advanced targeting systems, predictive AI, and calculated strategies. But humans were unpredictable. They fought dirty. They adapted. They turned chaos into victory. And they were about to teach the Dominion why you should never back a human into a corner. The final warning. Miller sent a final transmission to the Dominion flagship. It was simple. You should have left us alone. Then, in every corner of the globe, humanity's counterattack began. Explosions ripped through the Dominion motherships as Earth's hidden defenses activated all at once. Massive EMP fields detonated, disabling enemy targeting systems. Stealth strike teams infiltrated the alien command centers, sabotaging their technology. And in orbit, the first Dominion warship fell. Its hull split open as a hypervelocity railgun round punched straight through it. The Vrektor screamed in confusion. This was not how it was supposed to go. But it was too late. Humanity had made its decision. And now, the hunters had become the hunted. When the prey becomes the predator, the first shot fired by humanity was never seen coming. The Dominion fleet had positioned itself perfectly, blanketing Earth's sky with warships so massive they cast shadows over entire cities. The High Commander, Xalver, observed the planet below from the bridge of his flagship, the Vrexalith. He stood motionless, his golden exoskeletal armor glinting under the soft glow of Dominion battle readiness lights. The humans were scattered, isolated, underdeveloped, not even worth the effort of full-scale planetary war. His mandibles curled into something akin to amusement. This would be over before it began. The Earth's last warning. A sharp chime from the command interface broke the silence. High Commander, incoming transmission from the humans. The Dominion officer at the control console tilted his head, puzzled. He expected pleas for mercy. He expected desperation. Instead, the message was just a single sentence. Last chance. Leave now. A deep, reverberating growl of amusement rippled through the command deck. The bridge crew exchanged glances, their bioluminescent eyes flickering in amusement. The humans thought they had a choice. Xalver exhaled through his sharp teeth. What is the status of our fleet? All Dominion ships are fully operational. Orbital bombardment systems are primed. Shields are at maximum efficiency. Xalver's voice carried the weight of centuries of conquest. Then begin the extermination. Humanity's first strike. As the order was given, something unexpected happened. The Dominion fleet, designed to be the most advanced force in the galaxy, was blind to what came next. The first railgun round struck like a spear from the heavens. The Vrexalith's command deck lurched violently as the massive warship shuddered. The impact had come out of nowhere, bypassing their shields entirely. Status report. Exalvar bellowed. The officer at the scanning console froze, his 4 eyes widening in horror. Commander, the humans have weapons that can bypass our defenses. The hidden power of Earth. The Dominion's greatest strength had always been predictability. They had faced thousands of species before, all of them patterned, all of them static, all of them following the same logical systems that their highly sophisticated technology had already calculated and countered. But humanity was different. They didn't fight like an empire. They didn't fight like prey. They fought like insurgents, like predators, like demons from the dark. The second railgun strike hit harder than the first, and this time, the entire Dominion fleet felt it. All across orbit, hidden Terran warships, cloaked using a combination of electromagnetic masking and old-school radio silence, came to life. Missiles launched from underground silos across the planet, hidden beneath mountains and beneath the ocean floor. Stealth bombers, invisible to Dominion scans, pierced enemy formations like a blade through flesh. Eye-guided railgun rounds, fired from orbital platforms disguised as satellites, punched through Dominion hulls like they were made of glass. The Dominion reeled in confusion. No species had ever done this before. Zolver stumbled back as alarms blared through the command deck. His warships were supposed to be unstoppable, his shields impenetrable, his dominance absolute. And yet, human weapons were cutting them down like they were nothing. The unpredictable nature of humanity. One of the bridge officers turned sharply. "Commander, our weapons are struggling to lock onto their movements. Their fighters are." He hesitated. Zolver's 4 glowing eyes narrowed. "They are what?" The officer swallowed. "They are fighting in ways our systems cannot predict." Zolver snarled. "Impossible." The Dominion had mapped the war strategies of thousands of civilizations. Their weapons were designed to counter anything an inferior species could create. But humanity did not follow patterns. They zigged where they should have zagged. They turned suicide runs into victories. They used outdated weapons in ways that no logic-driven empire could comprehend. They weren't fighting to win a war in the traditional sense. They were fighting to make the Dominion regret everything. Ground war on a doomed planet. As the Dominion fought to regain control in orbit, something far worse happened on the ground. Massive drop pods crashed into Earth's surface, unleashing thousands of Rektar warriors into cities across the planet. They towered over humans, their bioplated bodies acting as living weapons, their razor-sharp claws slicing through steel like paper. But they had miscalculated again. They had assumed humans would break upon first contact. Instead, they found soldiers who had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. Urban fighters from the slums of Earth's megacities used guerrilla tactics to turn Dominion war formations into shattered corpses. Special forces teams sabotaged enemy supply chains, leaving Rektar warriors starving on an unfamiliar planet. Human engineers, always resourceful, took apart crashed enemy weapons and turned them against their makers. The Rektar expected a battlefield. They got a bloodbath. A sudden shift in power. The tide had turned. In less than 24 hours, Dominion forces were on the defensive. The unthinkable had happened. Humanity, a species that had never left their own solar system before, had turned one of the most feared empires in the galaxy into a cornered beast. The Dominion fleet was losing ships faster than they could retreat. Their warriors, designed for conquest, were being torn apart by an enemy that refused to fight by the rules. And for the first time in his life, Zolver felt something unfamiliar creeping into his mind. Fear. The message that ended the war. On Earth, Captain James Miller stood in a ruined street in the center of New York, his rifle still smoking, the remains of a Rektar warlord at his feet. He turned his gaze to the burning sky, watching as the last remnants of the Dominion fleet tried to flee. Then his comms crackled to life. "Captain," came the voice of Ava Monroe from Terran Command, her voice trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. "We're getting a transmission from the Dominion flagship." Miller narrowed his eyes. "Put it through." A broken, defeated voice filled the airwaves. "Human." That Zolver's voice was weak, full of disbelief. "What are you?" Miller exhaled, staring at the ruined bodies of the supposed apex species of the galaxy. His voice was calm, merciless. "We're what happens when you corner something that refuses to die." And with that, the war was over. For the first time in history, humanity had been hunted. And the hunters had learned the hard way that you should never corner a human. When the predator becomes the prey, the Vraktar Dominion had ruled the stars for millennia. They had crushed entire empires beneath their claws, leaving nothing but smoldering ruins and the echoes of forgotten civilizations in their wake. Their warships blotted out the skies of every world they conquered. Their warriors stood as unstoppable avatars of death, hunting their prey with precision and cruelty. But now, for the first time in history, they had miscalculated. They had come to Earth expecting submission. They had found something else entirely. They had found humans. The Great Retreat begins. On board the Dominion flagship Prexolith, High Commander Gazalver gripped the edges of his throne, his armored fingers digging into the metal as his empire burned before his eyes. The once imposing war fleet, which had loomed over Earth like a specter of doom, was now in chaos. Flaming wreckage drifted through space, the broken remains of countless Dominion warships that had fallen to human ingenuity and savagery. Zolver's four eyes flickered across the holographic battlefield display, trying to make sense of the madness unfolding before him. His fleet had never lost before. Now, they were in full retreat. A Dominion officer turned sharply from the command console, his bioluminescent eyes wide with fear. "High Commander, the humans are chasing us." Zolver snarled, his mandibles clicking in frustration. Impossible. But the data didn't lie. Terran warships, smaller, weaker, primitive by all accounts, were cutting through the retreating Dominion vessels like wolves chasing a wounded herd. This wasn't a war anymore. It was a hunt. The unrelenting fury of humanity. Captain James Miller stood aboard the Terran warship Indomitable, watching the greatest fleet in the galaxy flee for its life. His hands were steady, his breathing calm, but his eyes burned with the cold fire of a predator who had found his prey. The voice of Ava Monroe, his tactical officer, crackled through the comms. "Captain, enemy ships are retreating toward the Neptune expanse. Their hyperdrives are still offline from our disruptor field." Miller's lips curled into a humorless grin. "Then we don't let them escape." He turned to his fleet-wide comms, his voice carrying the weight of every human warfighter in the system. "Listen up. They came to our world expecting us to kneel. They slaughtered our people like cattle. They thought they were hunters." A pause. Then his voice dropped into a dangerous growl. "Show them what real hunters look like." The entire Terran fleet surged forward, engines flaring as humanity took the fight directly to the heart of the retreating Dominion forces. Stealth bombers slipped through the wreckage like ghosts, planting disruption mines along the enemy's escape routes. Terran strike fighters, moving in unpredictable swarms, shattered enemy formations with precision attacks. Heavy battleships, once thought inferior to Dominion capital ships, unleashed railgun fire that ripped through their enemies like paper. The Dominion never stood a chance. A last stand in the darkness. Near the edge of the solar system, the shattered remnants of the Dominion fleet reached the barren, frozen expanse of Neptune's orbit. There was no escape. The Terran warfleet surrounded them, cutting off any possible retreat. The Dominion vessels, once symbols of terror across the stars, now drifted in space like wounded animals, bleeding energy and debris. Zolver refused to accept the truth. His people were superior. His warfleet was unmatched. The Dominion had crushed dozens of empires before humanity had even discovered fire. And yet, here he was, surrounded by a species that should never have survived this long. A transmission crackled through the command deck. This is Admiral Elias Voss of the United Terran Defense Force. The voice was calm, controlled, level. You are surrounded. Power down your ships. Surrender, and you will be given mercy. Resist, and we will wipe every last one of you from existence. Xalver's pride screamed at him to fight, to go down as a warrior. But then, something terrifying happened. His crew, the same warriors who had once looked down upon lesser species with contempt, turned to him with something he had never seen before. They were afraid. He could see it in their glowing eyes. The Dominion had never feared anyone before. Until now. Until humans. A nightmare written in history. Xalver's mandibles trembled. He activated the transmission. His voice, once commanding, was barely above a whisper. "What are you?" A long silence. Then, Admiral Voss's voice came through the speakers one last time. "We are the reason your kind will never hunt again." And with that, the Terran Warfleet opened fire. The death of an empire. The final moments of the Dominion's greatest fleet were recorded in the Terran archives as a single brutal event. The Great Culling. There were no last-minute rescues, no reinforcements, no survivors. Humanity did not just win. They erased the Dominion from history. It took less than an hour for the remaining Praktar warships to be reduced to debris, their commanders incinerated in the void of space. And in that moment, the entire galaxy changed. The Praktar Dominion, the undisputed apex predators of the stars, were gone, and humanity stood in their place. The echoes of fear. Days later, the news of the Dominion's fall spread across the galactic network. Across thousands of worlds, alien civilizations that had once cowered before the Dominion celebrated the end of their oppressors. But behind the celebrations, behind the cheers, a deep, lingering fear took root. Because if humanity could destroy the greatest hunters the galaxy had ever known, what would they do to anyone who dared to threaten them next? The message sent to the stars, the final broadcast from Earth to the rest of the universe, was simple. It was a warning, a reminder, a promise. We do not seek war. We do not seek conquest. But if you come for us, if you try to put our backs against the wall, we will not run. We will not break. We will hunt you down, and we will end you. And with that, the age of human dominance began.